like to entertain a motion for a chair.
I nominate Lori Farrow as temporary chairman. Good to see you.
And then I'd like to stand for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank those members of the Planning and Zoning and the Conservation Commission for attending the meeting here. We have Alyssa DeJohns here to talk about what CREC is going to be providing to the town residents and to the commissions here. They're assessing economic growth potential. And Alyssa, if you could talk to us a little bit about what you're going to be doing and how this is going to be done, that would be great. Sure. If you want to come up here, that would be great, yeah.
Is there a certain spot you'd like me to do?
Right here.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good evening, everyone. My name is Alyssa DeJohn. I'm the Vice President of Research at the Connecticut Economic Resource Center. It's a private nonprofit organization in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. And we work with a number of towns and regions in the state to help them answer a number of different questions related to economic development, growth, what their trends might be, and also just trying to figure out what some potential scenarios could be for a town or a region. We also help regions with economic development strategies and also working with various stakeholders, including residents and businesses, to try to figure out what their vision is for their town or city, and then helping them to kind of marry that vision with what we're seeing in terms of trends and data. And so I've spoken with Selectman Chuck a few times about Stafford's situation and some different opportunities in terms of infrastructure improvements. And I know I kind of proposed, I think the EDC has seen a proposed work scope that we could conduct, or some sort of version of it, to try to assess the economic development potential in Stafford. What I did is presented an approach that has both a qualitative assessment as well as a quantitative assessment. So as a researcher, I like to look at some data. I like to see what the trends are telling us, what the demographic or trends are telling us. And we want to look at what's not only happening in Stafford, but in the larger region, so that we don't miss anything. So for example, what does the population look like? What are the trends looking like over time? We also want to look at the business mix of Stafford and the surrounding region, and then also what the growth potential is in the region, because there could be something going on in a nearby town or in a nearby city that maybe Stafford could take advantage of in some way, either by supporting it with workforce, by supporting it with different supplier industries. There could be a few different opportunities that way. And so we would look at some data to see what it tells us. And then in the proposal, we also proposed a few different kind of working sessions to get some qualitative inputs from different stakeholders, so that we can kind of look at the data, see what the data say, and then we can react to it. And the folks of Stafford can say whether or not that makes sense for Stafford. Does it make sense given your unique characteristics and where you see the overall vision of the town? And then I usually see that as a really nice, rich assessment of bringing the data and the stakeholder input together to try to draw forth some potential scenarios for economic development, and whether that kind of mixes with the overall interest of the town.
Does anybody have any questions they'd like, or did anybody receive copies of the planning and zoning, and I did send you any of the documentations? Did you receive any? You did? Yes. Okay. All right. So did you have any questions based on that?
I have a question.
Sure.
How are you going to get stakeholder assessments?
So what we would do is work with the town to kind of figure out who should be at the table. Should it be different town groups Do you want to have citizens come? And so we really kind of work with the town to figure out how best to kind of advertise the forum, or how you want that to work. Do you want it to be the EDC and the planning committees to work together? Do you want to bring in some resident input? Do you want business input? So we would try to figure that part out and then communicate.
I think one thing that people are looking for is
Yeah.
to do a survey of the community. And you
Okay.
and I had talked about
Yep.
that, you know, where we get the EDC, we get the Planning and Zoning Commission, Conservation Commission, to formulate some questions, and give those questions to you,
Mhm.
so that you can take and, you know, put the questions together that belong together.
Yep.
And then word them and do the poll in your way, so you can quantify the data.
Okay.
We talked.
Yeah, that's a good way to get some stakeholder input. There's a few different ways we can do it. Like when we worked with the town of Branford, we had a series of focus groups with residents to get input, residents and businesses. For the town of Woodbury, we did an online survey where I worked with the EDC to figure out what kind of questions they wanted. I formulated a survey, and then they were able to kind of, I think they have a newsletter, so they kind of broadcast it to their residents, and then they let a link of the survey be available on their website, and so that any resident could take it, and we got some good feedback that way.
And is it possible, like, each of the commissions could do a set of questions and we could derive that, because we obviously come from different places.
Mhm.
You know, Conservation Commission comes from a different place of interest in economic development and planning and zoning. I think
Right.
that they're, you know, all,
Right, so if you came to me with certain types of questions you wanted to get answered, then I could formulate them so they would be, you know, unbiased, and that type of thing, and make sure that we get development, planning, conservation questions, all part of that survey.
I was under the impression that the three commissions were to work together on the surveys, not separately. Am I wrong in that assumption?
we are all going to be working on them individually, because we all come from a different place with that. You know, economic development has a vision of economic growth, and Conservation Commission has a vision of conserving the land and the forest, and so we each have a different kind of interest, I think, which is all important in the whole, but we all come from kind of a different place in our thoughts and what we want to go in. We want to go
I
together.
guess we had discussed at one planning and zoning meeting that we had questions, and perhaps if we all met together and worked on them together, that we wouldn't be spinning our wheels making up the same survey questions. So I guess I would like to see the three commissions work together. Do you believe that
That
could
would
be?
be very helpful, actually.
Very helpful.
Yes.
One of the comments we had at a planning and zoning meeting was to try to avoid redundancy. You know, some of the questions are obviously gonna be similar, or maybe even the same,
Right.
and as Nancy just indicated, why waste time and energy on something that's been prepared? So I think it's a good idea that each commission could possibly come up with a list of questions, and then we have a joint meeting to thin out any redundancies, or, you know, before they're finalized, and
The EDC does have questions that we have prepared and everything, so we'd be more than welcome to all meet together.
We haven't worked on them yet because we thought we were working together and we hadn't seen a meeting, so I'm sorry, but we don't have any at this point, but I'm sure we're gonna be working on them, right, Cindy?
Mhm.
Would you have any recommendation, for example, for how long a survey should be, or, you know, I can envision having a survey that is short enough so that people will actually work through it and not
Absolutely.
get to a point where.
Yeah, especially one where you're just advertising it on a website or something like that, you want it to be less than 5 minutes. So lots of multiple choice questions, you know, maybe one or two open-ended questions at the end, but those we would keep to a minimum. And, I mean, when the commissions are thinking about survey questions, don't worry about making them sound perfectly survey question-like. I mean, that's what I can do. So if you want to know, you know, if you want to know how people view Stafford in relation to other communities, or when they think of Stafford, what other communities come to mind? How do they compare themselves? And so, you know, that could be a question. So if you just want to know kind of comparison type questions, or if you want to know if people's priorities are they conservation? Are they growing the grand list? Are they just, you know, those types of kind of general categories are helpful, and then I can turn them into different survey questions. Because I'm sure that there will be a lot of overlap, and we can work through that, my staff can work through
Is
that.
there a general idea of how many questions should come from each commission? A dozen, 10, 20?
Oh, I don't think you'd want the survey to be more than 10 or 12 questions total.
Right, so each commission should come up with perhaps a list of 5 to 10 questions.
Right, and then we can see where there's overlap, because there's probably a lot that I can put together. So if you send me a list, if there's 5 from each commission, then we can probably get it together, down to a 10 question survey.
Listen, will your survey get into any observation of what types of businesses might fit and might do well in our community?
We can do that. We did that with the town of Woodbury. I think the survey that you're thinking of is gonna be very similar to what we did with Woodbury. And we asked folks kind of what types of businesses they would like to see. And that was really interesting. Really interesting to see that. And then we also asked people kind of what their age was, and there were some striking differences among, the ages of the residents and what they wanted in the town.
Will you be using your expertise on opinion on any business that might or might not fit? Or are you just gonna take
So-
what you get from the survey?
Right, so we have the industry analysis as well. So we'd be looking at what the data's telling us for both Stafford and for the larger region. So we'd be seeing what industries which ones are growing, which ones are declining, and then which industries might be growing in the region that maybe Stafford could supply to or something like that. So we'd be getting data that way. The survey is qualitative input, so we would be using that to kind of put together. Because if we're hearing a lot from the residents that they want to keep things status quo, then if the industry data is telling us that we want a huge manufacturing complex or something, but the residents are saying they want to keep everything kind of small and boutique-y, then we're gonna have to then we'll have to come together and talk about what that would mean in terms of an overall recommendation.
How do you get the survey out if people don't use the internet?
That's a good question. So it depends, if the town is willing, we can have hard copies of the survey available at town hall. I don't know how you typically communicate with your residents.
Well, we have meetings, but they don't come.
They don't come.
Okay, is there a town newspaper or newsletter or?
I think making it available at the town hall is a
I
viable
personally
option.
think that it's not overly expensive to prepare the questions and have a company call
I was
a
thinking
large
of,
group or everybody in town. I mean, I've seen what some of the
Yeah.
prices are, and for the outreach, it's, you've given every single person that
A
opportunity.
chance, we can do that, we do have a phone survey vendor, so I could give the cost for that too, if you'd like to see that. Be happy to look into that, so you can compare the cost.
Yeah.
I have a question, interrupt for just a second. Might be helpful if we had the questions from a town like Woodbury, so we're not starting from ground zero and,
copy of the survey from where I did
Yeah.
it online.
Yes.
if you shared anything you
Not
had
anymore.
from the past, it would give us a good place to start from, possibly.
I can, but I also wanna know from Stafford what your
I
burning
understand,
questions
I
are.
understand.
I don't want
just
it,
need
I don't want it to just be another survey for another town.
Just need to
But-
understand it.
You'll get other questions, I'm
Okay,
sure.
yeah.
okay,
Um,
absolutely,
In the proposal,
Yeah.
you had consensus building meetings.
right.
Could you explain those a little more?
Those were, what we were thinking of as having the meetings kind of with the different, the commissions, to kind of work through some issues, to look at the data together, see what it means, to talk about the survey input and what that could mean, and then thinking about a different, a vision for Stafford, given the economic trends, the economic realities, and kind of working together to see if we could come up with some consensus. So it'd just be a series of kind of meetings so that we could all work together. Because we usually find that commissions don't typically get together, separate commissions don't typically get together, and so that might be helpful for Stafford.
One of the questions I have on this is, we have a utility expansion project in the planning stages. What distances we can track if we get that project completed, and also what the impact would be if the project is denied to the current hospital, the social and economic impact of that facility closing. Is that something that's going to be included in the scope of work?
Somewhat. So as part of the consensus building exercise, I think we would talk about the potential, what could Stafford be if the infrastructure project came to fruition. We did not include what would the economy look like absent the hospital. That is not part of this scope. That is something we can do, that's much more involved. That requires us to purchase data and economic impact models and things like that, but we can absolutely do that. We could also think about it too, and kind of, see if that's something you need. I don't know when the decision on the infrastructure project will happen. If you need that information to communicate to decision makers about the infrastructure project, that's a different scenario, we could talk about that.
What approximately is your, very generally speaking, the timeline from say, an agreement being made with you guys and survey questions being provided to the final report? And I understand their meetings take place, so, but
Right.
generally speaking, a year, or is that?
Oh, no, I would think, it depends on how we facilitate the survey. If it's online and we wanna leave it open for residents to take it, that could take a month in the field. But if we do a phone survey, we could probably turn that around in like a week or two, in a week or two's time. And then it would be, the data analysis typically would take 4 to 8 weeks, and then we'd wanna stagger those consensus building meetings kind of throughout the project. So I see this being about maybe a 4-month time frame. Depending on when we start, if the contract starts, August 1, we may not wanna schedule a meeting till September. So it kinda depends a little bit on the timing, so I would expect it to be no more than 6 months, I would say.
I have a question for Richard on this, from CERC. It said the consensus building exercise team will consist of 3 meetings, and the town will be responsible for identifying and inviting the participants. Do you have any idea who the participants would be at this point?
At this point right now, we're looking at the Planning and Zoning Commission, EDC, Conservation Commission, but we also have to have public meetings too.
So we would be included in these 3 meetings with CERC?
Yeah,
Okay.
there has to be joint meetings together.
Very good.
You know, the hospital, and that scope that was presented, Alyssa and I have talked a couple of times, and the hospital was one of the things we talked about. So, I think after tonight's meeting, and what Alyssa takes from tonight's meeting and talking to everyone here, she can have a better feeling as to how we have to adjust this scope to cover more of things that we may have missed in our initial, the hospital was one that we had missed, but I think it's important that we know what the social and economic impact's gonna be if the hospital was to close. St. Francis is buying them, but that's no guarantee that they're staying open. It's a good sign, but with their issues with the sewer, it could drastically change things down the road within a couple of years if we don't move and do something.
Yeah, are there other questions that you're trying to get answers to that I can think about in terms of working it into the work scope?
I think, I don't remember, in the proposal, once the study is completed, would there be a presentation type meeting, like a public meeting we could have, say, at the senior center where there's more room for the general public to hear what the final evaluations were, how it was prepared, like a wrap-up type.
Yeah. Yeah, we usually include that as part of our project, but I can make sure that's specifically stated.
And based on the survey, then you would be able to work with the EDC on how to bring this all to fruition, the businesses, how to market, how to...
In terms of implementation, yeah, that might be kind of a next phase. I think it will be important to see kind of what the data show us. And see see if you're comfortable with the results, and then if you're interested in help with implementation, we can do that as well.
That's a very important question, because, right, interpreting and implementing the study,
So the work
you know,
begins.
rather than putting it on a shelf somewhere.
And that you would, help along with the zoning and conservation to get to the.
We can help with that as well, yeah. I didn't put it in this scope because we
No.
just don't know what the results are.
Right.
And so I'd rather wait and then just do a different project if you'd like us to help with that.
Perhaps we could even get Donald Poland to attend.
Well,
because he's
that's one of the things that I read was missing in there, is working with the planner
with the
consultant
planner.
too.
Mhm.
But,
Because he's prepared for us the document that we should probably move forward
Oh, great.
to you.
Great. And I saw that Cameron Miller Group did your POCD,
Right.
which is great. We work with Brian Miller quite a bit,
Okay,
so.
and you have that, or did you need that document?
I read your POCD online.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
For you, collecting data from town people is the way to get an idea of what the town direction wants to be. Is there any other data that you guys use besides what the citizens want? Kind of like, what can this town offer the outside people to come into town?
Yes, so we would look at demographic trends to see kind of how the resident population has changed over time. And then we would also look at the business mix currently of the town, and then also the mix of the surrounding region, to see what's growing and what's not. So that's the type of data we would look at in addition to surveying the residents.
Where's that data come from?
It comes from the Census Bureau. The American Community Survey has a really nice data set now that comes out every year. We also use the Department of Labor, all of their business and employment data by industry. And then I will probably have to look at the Massachusetts Department of Labor as well, because I want to do kind of a larger regional study. So that's always exciting, putting two states' labor department data sets together, but we can do that as well to do kind of a larger region to see what's happening, and see what opportunities there could be for Stafford.
Yeah, that would be very important, because the cars continue over the state line in both directions, they don't stop right at the line.
Absolutely. And do you know how many visitors you get to the Speedway each weekend?
We could get some numbers.
I was curious, I was looking on the website and I saw all their events every weekend, but I didn't get a sense of how many people are coming in. I'm assuming it's
Substantial.
quite a bit. So you've got a lot of people driving through here on a very
That's right.
regular basis. So you're not,
Seasonal.
right, so you don't just have the resident population, but you have these visitors.
Well, the state highway running through town,
Right.
and it's an artery that, you know, trucks, everything comes through.
And another consideration similar to that, that if you're not aware of it, there are two large campgrounds that have, we get an influx of people in the summertime, and then they're gone in the wintertime. And the ages vary, it's not all snowbirds, but that's something critical, they're stakeholders in town,
Interesting.
and, you know, it's a unique situation that other towns may not have.
Right. Well, it's like the shoreline communities.
Yes.
So Saybrook is 10,000 people in the winter and 25,000 in the summer. So they have to deal with a lot of different issues. So it would be similar to that. Yeah.
Now, if you're doing a phone survey, how do you deal with people that don't have landlines?
Yeah, so we actually get a sampling of both cell phones and landlines. We're able to take care of that issue. Yes, that's a really good question. Yes.
Do you look at tax rates, mill rates, in this town and neighboring towns, and the effect of a plan on that mill rate? And how it will affect, you know, related to other towns?
That's a good question. I mean, we can look at the kind of the fiscal comparisons of Stafford with surrounding towns. I didn't propose it in this because it seemed like we were trying to come up more with a vision for Stafford. That I could see a little bit down the line when we think about what businesses may have a potential in Stafford. And so if we were doing some build-out scenarios, how would that affect the mill rates as a result? So at this point, I don't see anything in the work scope that would necessitate that scenario development, but I could see that during, sometime in a second phase. It's a very good point, because that, affecting the mill rate is something that's on everyone's minds, every town's mind. Yes?
What is the minimum amount of data you need to be able to come up with a conclusion? Having 11,000 people here, what is your sampling?
So I will look to see what the appropriate sample size is. I am not assuming I'm gonna need more than 100 surveys to do that, but I will double check, because I wanna make sure that the confidence interval is statistically significant and things like that, but I would assume no more than 100. It might even be 75, I'm not sure. But I'll be able to figure that out. I'll put that in the proposal when I revise it.
Yeah, do you take into consideration the poverty rates and the median income rates, incomes in town? And when you do your recommendations, do you recommend the type of businesses that would come in that would help increase that median household income and reduce the poverty rates?
Okay, that's an interesting question. So what we would do is your question about getting more jobs for residents or providing
Yes.
more services?
No, providing more and better jobs.
More and better jobs. Okay, so, that's a slightly different question than what additional services could we provide the residents and these visitors to the town?
Yes, it is.
So, it's very different, and
It's a very important question.
it's a very important question. So, we could make that one of our criteria when we're doing the industry analysis, is to look at the level of, income, like the median wage by industry. Is it above, is it below the state average, and make that a priority, for one of the criteria.
Mhm.
And that could be a point of discussion, because there could be some industries that would be good for Stafford because it would provide more employment opportunities for your residents, but then there could be some, retail opportunities that would, benefit from all the traffic you have coming through. So there's probably a few different opportunities and for different reasons. Yeah, that's a good question, and I note that too. Okay,
Yeah, now, you just said 100 people, now how many people do you actually survey in the town?
So
Just,
you survey a sample of the resident population, and you wanna make sure that it's statistically significant, so that you have a good enough sample so that it's representative of your population.
so how do you go about deciding what's a good sample and what will be an unbiased decision?
Right, so what I'm gonna do when I get back to my office tomorrow is do my calculations to figure out, okay, how would I get a sample that is plus or minus 5% given the population of the town? And then, and given the adult population of the town, and because we would be surveying anyone over 18. And so I would look at that sample to try to figure out what would be appropriate.
So how can 100 people decide what is best for a town of 11,000 people?
That's how any survey works. You do a representative sample of your population. If you called everyone in the town, you'd be basically taking a census. And so that's gonna be a lot more costly and a lot more time consuming. So all surveys work that way. But we'll figure out what would be statistically significant, so that it would actually be representative of the population, you'd be able to draw some conclusions from it.
In 1995, prior to redoing the zoning regulations, a survey was sent out with questions, and the way we did it was posted in the reminder, and they either mailed it or dropped it off at the town hall. And we had received over 300 responses that time, and we thought that was good. So it seems to me like 75 or 100 is not a real good number.
I probably shouldn't have even given out a number.
Oh,
Let me
alright.
just, I'm just saying it's probably 100, because I know to be representative of Connecticut, we have to get 400 surveys. So I'm saying, okay, so for this population, I'm guessing it's 100, but when I go back, I will figure out what would be the representative sample for Stafford,
Thank you.
and I'll put it in there.
And you're saying that's a minimum number, you're not saying it's a maximum number. So clearly, if we put it on the internet and we post something and you call people and we end up with 450, you're not gonna throw out 350 and go with 100.
Right.
You're gonna use the whole thing.
We could do a few different ways. Now, if we start changing the way the survey is administered, we would actually have to kind of keep the results somewhat separate. So we could see what the respondents from the phone survey said versus the respondents from the online survey. But, oh yeah, we could do both ways.
Just to clarify for some people, I think there may be a misunderstanding, but that's a generally accepted practice of sampling data from a population based, statistically speaking, that's how it's done.
That's how they report the election results when only 1% has been reported, yet they come up when they determine the winner, and they're right.
I think that's what I was getting at, you weren't stuck at 75 or 100.
No, I'm
whatever
just saying,
response you get.
I'm guessing that that's
Yeah.
what the number's going to be, but I have to do my calculation to figure out what's significant, what will be the right sample for your town.
But then the other issue that comes up with the scenario that you just described is we have to make sure that the survey results aren't skewed, so we have only
Or
people
duplicate.
over 65 years old, for
Right.
example, or 95% of the respondents fall within the same category.
Right, so we can screen people, and we can make sure that we have a good age balance, and if you care about having a good age balance and an income distribution, then that's what we would do. And so if someone, if we were calling and we already had too many people in their 20s, then we'd thank them for their time, and we'd hang up and we'd go to the next call or that kind of thing. Make sure that we get a representative sample.
I think that's one of the most important things, is to get a representative
Right.
sample,
Right.
that you just mentioned, is one that represents, all walks of life in town, basically.
Exactly, and the issue with an online survey, while it's much less expensive, you don't know who's going to take the survey. So it could be, everyone could be the same age, could be the same income level, I mean, you just kind of take what you can get. And so it can be useful, it can give you some useful information, but the phone survey, while being more expensive, you actually get to kind of plan out how you want your respondents to be. You can have them nicely distributed by age and income.
If it's online, could they do it like vote more than once, and you don't want that?
Right, so what we do is we can control that by saying once that particular computer has submitted one, they can't submit another one.
That's good.
I can't stop someone from running to every computer in the library and taking it.
That could
but
happen.
It could happen,
And then
I
also the
can't control
answers to the questions, about age or whatever, the kid could have a ball answering questions all afternoon.
I think I like the phone survey a lot.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you both options so you can see the prices too. So, there's good and bad too. I mean, I like phone surveys too, because I can control it a lot more, so I prefer them, but
And then you're more comfortable with your
a lot more
data.
comfortable. Absolutely.
One more question.
Sure.
Your organization, how many towns have participated in a survey like this?
I mean, we've probably worked with at least half of the towns in the state. Doing surveys, we've probably done 20 maybe, in the past few years.
We're just thinking more of benchmarking, so you have quite a bit of data to be able to benchmark. Do you go outside of your own research in benchmarking?
What do you mean?
When you're trying to comparison, do you use data that is not data that you guys worked on? Do you work with any other company that?
I mean, I'll partner with a phone survey vendor to do the phone survey. We work with planners, with land use folks, with architects, depending on the question at hand. We use all public data as much as possible. Sometimes we purchase data when we have to. Okay, so yes, there's some private data that sometimes we purchase. If we're working with a small region and we just don't like the quality of the public data is fine, but sometimes they're called suppressions because the region is so small, they can't tell me how many food manufacturers there are because they're worried that they're gonna give away a trade secret or something. So I might go buy some industry data to help supplement that.
Perhaps you could even look back, we had another survey done by CERC, January 2006, the Land Use Economic Development Analysis draft, and it was very interesting. It was on the commercial, industrial, and retail.
Oh, great, okay.
So you didn't know about that?
You didn't,
I forgot about it.
Okay.
okay.
I was actually at CERC, but I don't remember that one in particular.
But that would be in your file somewhere.
That would be in my file.
Is that a survey or just a study?
It was,
Land use and economic development.
I just got the draft, but I think it was approved.
I think it's just a report. It's
Just a
study.
report,
I don't
yeah,
think it was a
okay.
But
survey
it's,
done by residents.
it's quite in-depth on what they had done there about it.
Well, it might be interesting to do comparisons and
Right,
just
and
to
they
have it.
compared Stafford with Summers, Ellington, Tolland, et cetera, and metropolitan Hartford.
Metropolitan Hartford, yes. Actually, that was a question I had. So, do you see Hartford as your urban area or Springfield? Because they seem to be kind of equidistant.
Neither would be
Neither.
one.
Interesting.
Actually, I guess Enfield would be more of the urban,
Our own
right?
region.
Mostly everybody goes to Enfield or Manchester,
Okay.
shopping.
For shopping, so you go to Enfield for your
Or up the Mass.
Yeah, or survey.
Sturbridge.
Yeah. But
So you don't really
hardly
need
ever to
Hartford or Springfield for anything?
Sometimes.
Hospitals, doctors,
So that was, I just wanted to ask that question.
work.
And work, of course.
Everybody works in Hartford.
Absolutely. Hartford, okay, more of a pull to Hartford than Springfield.
Oh, yes, yeah.
I'd rather have it be here.
You know, travelers and all your state offices.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're actually lucky to have some tourist destinations in your town. There are a lot of, relatively rural areas that don't have that opportunity. So that could be one that you can capitalize on if you choose to.
You mentioned the volume of people coming through. The Brimfield Fair is so big,
Mhm.
and it does affect Stafford pretty dramatically.
Is that something that's held regularly, or is it once a year?
Three times a year.
Three times.
Three times a
It's
year.
actually the Brimfield Antique Show, it's the largest antique show in the country.
Really?
New
I'm
England.
gonna have to check that out.
It's, people all over the world come. It's enormous.
Now, I'm
Really?
also wondering, we discussed it in zoning about the impact through Stafford if the casino comes in.
Right.
I think 84 doesn't involve it, but you don't know, especially Enfield is looking at wanting to give a proposal in East Hartford, so I don't know
Right.
if that's anything in the mix.
Right, I mean, there's a groundbreaking in Springfield. That is actually why I started thinking about Springfield versus
Mhm.
Hartford for you. Like, would there be any reason for people going to the Springfield casino to drop down to Stafford for?
Well, only I think if it goes to Enfield or East Hartford, not Springfield.
Interesting, okay.
Yeah.
Well, we
It was
heard last
more-
week at another meeting that we went to, a certain meeting, that there was also a proposal to put it at the airport. Cathedral
Oh,
Airport,
that's
where
right.
the old terminal is.
Yeah,
in
East
Townsend.
East Windsor,
Potential,
East Hartford, East Windsor, and Enfield, those are the three that we heard are under consideration. I think it's more of a traffic impact than more anything.
Mhm.
Or it could be, we could support a hotel or a motel.
Right. Do you have any hotels, motels here?
No.
Just bed and breakfast.
Do you have any recent examples of like successful plan implementation or just plan implementation at all by other towns?
Yeah, in a few different ways. Probably the town of Branford was one, where they have 4 different development areas off of exit 95, and they're vastly, these 4 exits are vastly different. I mean, one, you get off the ramp and you're at an apple orchard, the next one you're at like a biotech center, they're just so different from one another. And so they wanted us to do an industry analysis and then host a series of focus groups with their businesses to figure out what made sense for Branford. And so we were able to actually build a little bit of consensus that way and help them with, they were also thinking about bringing some data to DOT to kind of support some transportation improvements, and so they were able to successfully, bring that to the town, and then also just build some consensus among their businesses and a little bit of pride in Branford as well, so that was nice. In terms of the town of Woodbury, this one was interesting because we worked on it just 2 or 3 years ago. when the economic recession was probably even more sluggish than it is now. And they wanted to figure out what to do with their downtown area. A lot of the antique stores have left with the onset of the internet, and not as many people have to go to antique stores regularly. So they have a lot of vacant properties. They have an issue there because they don't have any sewer infrastructure, and they only have some public water in some small spots. They're trying to figure out how to kind of redevelop their downtown. And so we were looking at the economic data and found some industries that seemed to work for Woodbury, kind of keeping the balance of a lot of their residents were very interested in maintaining the status quo. They didn't really want to think of anything major moving into the town. So we suggested a few things that would kind of add to some vibrancy of the downtown. But we suggested to them that before kind of going forward with a real big push to bring these businesses in, that they focus on their events and bringing more people to the town and generating some interest before making a real economic development push because of the slow economic growth in the state. So we kind of suggested to them that they put the brakes on for a little bit. And so they kind of appreciated that feedback. And so they're working on kind of making some of their events a little more, enhancing them, making them a little bit longer, a little bit bigger, to drive more traffic, and then just to keep kind of building on the case that some of these retail establishments could make sense for Woodbury, but a little bit later on, once the economy gets going a little bit more. So it's just two examples I can.
And the Hyde Park Commission in Stafford is looking to develop the Blues Festival. It's gonna be like the 3rd annual. So that's something that they're looking to do to help get the people into Stafford.
That's great.
and
That's great.
Music and arts.
Could you just talk to everybody a little bit about the fundamentals of economic development, not being just new construction, new buildings, but kind of the whole package of what we're looking at, kind of real briefly what was discussed in that last.
Sure, I mean, economic development, the concept, the term economic development has really changed over the past number of decades. People usually, they hear the term economic development and think of it as just bringing businesses in, kind of doing a transaction, making a sale, selling a property. And it does include that to some degree, but now it has evolved to include things like making a vibrant place for residents, for their businesses, and really balancing the attributes and the assets of the town with the economic realities. And it's also important to kind of maintain good relationships with the businesses you have, because most of your job growth is going to be from businesses that are already here. And so you can expect to have, some business growth, but it's that, thinking that there's this white knight that's going to kind of walk, ride up and save the day. Doesn't typically happen. Sometimes it does, but it's really cultivating relationships with current businesses. Having an attraction strategy, but then also just creating a vibrant place where people want to be is now kind of all the different parts of that.
How will you describe vibrant? Can you be more specific?
Vibrant? Yeah, I mean, it's a place where you have probably a mixture of ages. People want to move to your town. There's housing options available. I mean, people typically move to a town. Now that it's important to, of course, be near a job, and you move towards the job. I mean, most of us do that kind of thing. But it's also interesting to live in an interesting place. People find the idea of living in a place to be very compelling now, almost as important as being close to your job, especially for millennials. The younger generations are finding that to be very important. So making sure that there's opportunities for people to relax, to enjoy nature, to have some place to go, to enjoy their time off, as well as a job is important.
So in other words, you're saying to have a vibrant downtown community that has events being held that exploits the natural beauty of the town, that works on what is already here to exploit and attract more people into what's already happening, would be the best way to develop your economics in the
It's-
town of Stafford?
I would say it's more, it's very important. It's not just thinking about bringing businesses into town, but,
Yes, I know.
but really kind of
Thank you.
enhancing what you have.
Thank you.
Whole, it's
Can I quantify, because I know where this conversation's headed?
Yeah,
You
I
stepped
don't,
into it,
It's-
Richard.
It's also about lowering taxes, building a grand list.
right,
Existing businesses that are here are only gonna contribute minuscule to doing that. And I'm not advocating we overdevelop the entire town, but it's also about lowering the taxes.
Sure.
It's about changing that mill rate. It's about bringing more economic growth to town.
sure.
And it's gonna take a mix of existing businesses, and we got a mix, we got small mom and pop businesses,
Sure do.
and we got large corporations in
Yep.
town. You know, we need to make sure that the small businesses succeed, and we need to help the larger businesses expand,
Right,
from that perspective. But it, you know, the bottom line that I'm looking at economic development is, we need to lower taxes. You know, everything keeps going up every single year. The well is dry, there's no place else to cut in the budget.
right.
You know, everybody thinks there's this big budget and a pot of money to take from, it's not there. We need to bring new revenues into the town and move forward.
It's interesting in the CERC survey in January 2006, it did address that. It's in contrast, commercial and industrial development usually generates more municipal tax revenue than they consume in services. However, the amount of surplus tax revenue varies considerably in the type of project. For example, given the same parcel of land, industrial development generally would generate more tax revenue than retail development, primarily due to the presence of expensive machinery equipment, which generates also a personal tax.
But-
In addition,
But
industrial users.
I've addressed that in meetings several times
Yeah.
before.
So, I mean, I
There is
don't
no
wanna.
taxes on industrial manufacturing equipment any longer in the state of Connecticut. We lost $1.5 million in revenue when the state passed that. So we can make more in tax revenue from a restaurant. Let's say we got a 10,000 square foot restaurant and a 10,000 square foot machine shop. Based on that study, yes, the machine shop generates more. In today's market, the restaurant generates more, because you can tax the restaurant equipment. You're not getting taxes on the manufacturing, all you're getting is just the building.
But the manufacturing probably pays double the wages for a person who lives in
Well,
Stafford, so
and
I
I'm not
mean,
gonna-
it
I'm not gonna
washes.
I'm not gonna
know.
dispute that, but we have to balance,
Fair wages,
We
you
have-
know.
but we have to balance that, and fair wages means jobs for multiple people through the scale, from, you know, entry level, starting high school jobs to manufacturing jobs, and we have to have that rounded mix.
That's what I'm saying, we need a mix.
Yes.
It can't all be retail.
Right.
We've got to get commercial, a business park,
Well,
maybe Yukon, perhaps we could, talk to about, even doing a satellite, school, or as Nantucket, I mean, there's so many
And we're not-
opportunities.
There is nobody in the town of Stafford that's advocating that all we want is retail. You know, and one thing I wanna make very clear to everybody, I do not want this to turn into what we had in 2005 with an anti-Walmart, anti-retail push spin on it. Because all that does is take the focus off of the town of Stafford. That ship has sailed. Walmart isn't coming to town.
No, they're not.
You know, and I wanna be very specific, I don't want this to turn into that. You know, people want what they want, but there's also things that are gonna be needed that some people don't want, on both sides of the aisle. And
That's,
we
that's
have
the
to-
purpose of the study.
That's
Right.
why she's here,
Right.
because she's the expert to tell us what
Right. We
makes
need-
sense, and,
right.
and I think she's saying that before all these businesses are gonna show up, we have to give them a reason to be here, and we have to give people a reason to be here, and to do that, we need them to wanna be in a place.
Right.
And give them a sense of, I wanna be in Stafford because Stafford is X, Y, Z.
Right.
Give them a
Absolutely,
reason.
absolutely, we need grocery stores, we need, department stores, we need all of these things, but we need to do it, I guess, in the right way that is best for Stafford.
Maybe we can work with CERC, once they get our regional data,
Mhm.
you know, we can work with them to also reach out, I mean, and I'll use Aldi's for an example. You know, Aldi's wants a population of 15,000 in their town or a 3-mile radius of their town. But what they're looking for is based on their business model. If we can go to them with a proposal showing Stafford, parts of Ellington, parts of Towland, up into Massachusetts, the radius of their other stores, maybe we can work with CERC to come up with a proposal to all these, or another grocery store to come here. Because our population's 11,000, but if you look at our regional population and the roads coming into Stafford, maybe we can get something like
I
that.
think that's a very important data that you need to do.
Well, we get back to where we were a hub that drew from all around us,
Mhm.
and then the business is gonna say, that looks good.
Correct.
I think our downtown area though is a real big draw. I have a lot of friends that come in that are part of the dance communities that are, around the state. And they love downtown Stafford. And there's things that are very beautiful about it, that the businesses are very good. But there's also things that really need to be fixed up there. So I think a mix of fixing the downtown is very critical, with maybe putting some of these smaller businesses. The downtown is what, when people say Stafford, they automatically think of Stafford Springs, they automatically think of basically the Rotary and maybe a few hundred yards in every direction, and that's Stafford Springs in their mind, and Stafford in their mind. So if we could fix that and make that beautiful as an attraction, I think, that's a good starting point. I'm with you on taxes. I'm at the point I retired, and 1/6 of my retirement goes to pay property tax on my house. I can't live with that forever. So I wanna keep taxes down, but I also wanna keep the town, something different, we have something different. There's no town like us with a center like this, and nearby anyway, and I think we need to look at that as something, as an attraction, as opposed to a cost.
I will agree with Richard that we have to expand the grant list. We have to be very careful about how we do that. We cannot be, according to CERC's own figures, town of Stafford has one of the highest poverty rates in Talon County. It also has one of the lowest median household incomes in Talon County. That's why I asked that question before. The types of businesses we bring in can, in many cases, demand more in services than they bring in taxes. And we have to be very careful about that. And quite frankly, I've read at least a dozen studies from all across this country. One of them from Concord, New Hampshire is disturbing. Another one says that, Richard's hot on restaurants, but chain restaurants, in the studies that I've read, are some of the very worst that you can bring into your town. And they've incredible amount of services that they demand, far outweighs the kind of taxes that they bring into town. I can get you that if you want. So I think that when we bring in businesses, we have to, and I agree, that you probably do need more retail in Stafford, but I think that more than that, we need to raise the median income in this town so that people can afford things and afford to go to the business that we do bring here and spend their money there. I think that that's the way this town should be heading. That's just the study in Concord, New Hampshire, and of course, this is not going. We're not going to have the big lots development like we talked about. I doubt that that'll ever happen again. But in Concord, New Hampshire, they had a similar tax problem that we have. And what they did is they went crazy and brought in all this kind of retail development, and their tax base fell by 19%, and it never recovered. It's the type of thing that we have to be aware of here.
I also think that the gas line, the fuel line that goes up the 190 is very critical with Johnson Memorial Hospital. To keep that place going is really important for this community. And with the land that's behind the hospital, you could have the development of professional buildings. You could bring in the income that you know, we desire and we would like to see here in Stafford. But we all gotta realize how that's gotta happen, you know, and how important that growth is for Stafford and how important the gas line is.
I would also question on how old these studies are that you keep referring to, because the economics in New England have changed drastically over the past 5 years even.
They may have. But also, you're
Well,
forgetting,
you
you're
just heard
forgetting
it from,
about,
you just heard it from a professional.
Well, that's why,
The
that's
economics
why
of
we're
New
reaching
England are
out
changing.
to
the
professionals.
economics are constantly changing,
and-
we all know that.
And that's, we need to rely on professionals because quite frankly, we don't have the specific expertise of gathering the data and meshing it together and coming out with realistic solutions. I mean, there's no shortage of opinions in this town, just like every other town.
Absolutely.
But I think this is something we need professionally done, and then decisions can be made from what professionals recommend or point out.
And it's a whole different world post the mini recession we had. You know, post 2008, it's a whole different thing. There's our white knight now.
Well, I think the EDC is on the right track in partnering with you people, because much of what everybody said, I mean, all the different changes in the economy nationally, specifically within Connecticut, what we really need to do before we're looking in any specific direction is a good, unbiased survey. Not a survey where we attempt to steer it towards, you know, higher income job businesses or retail businesses or any specific purpose. I think what we need to do is just to go forward. I think it's a good relationship to partner with your firm to get that unbiased sampling and let that steer us as to what we need to do with respect to planning and zoning, conservation, selectmen, to bring to people of Stafford what it is they're looking for, because everybody's hit on important things. The mill rate, as Rich knows, that I'm very upset by. Your senior population is ever growing. They look for services where they don't have to travel 15, 20 miles to get them. We're severely lacking in them. So let them tell us what it is that Stafford needs to be unique to fit its people, and then go from there. I just would hate to see something come out that is trying to be steered in any specific direction. Any studies that were done prior to right now really don't hold much value, because the economy has changed so much each year in the last 10 years that they're not really valid anymore. And I would really like to see what the people of Stafford really think now. And as far as your numbers with surveys, you're right on base. When these universities do a study of the statewide, 1,100 they'll do that covers the whole state. So your numbers are fairly accurate for just guesses. But I think the EDC is going in the right direction. I think you can help us a lot. And I think we should move forward with that and then discuss it at great length.
So do you suggest that, relative to the planning zoning, that we don't make any drastic changes while this process is going on?
I think this process will inform any future decisions you want to make. I don't know if you have any major decisions on the
Well,
table right now.
we have some regulations.
Yes, it's
Change,
actually something
excuse me,
that's
Shane, we're
being-
talking about regulations, not applications, just yet. We have some regulation changes that are coming up, but I don't think it would affect what research and survey you're going
Well,
to be doing.
I understand that Donald Poland did his report, and
Excuse me, I think we're getting really sidetracked here
Yeah.
for something that pertains to a public hearing that's coming up next
Correct.
week. I think it's really inappropriate to even be tossing this out here right now.
No, I'm not talking about that, I'm
Thank you,
talking
Dave.
about
That is what I was
regulations,
gonna say.
David. I'm talking about the Poland report and all that we're working on. Should we hold off on those? That's what I'm referring to, until this is completed.
On the Poland report?
Yeah, the Poland report, he had a vision for the town, and I mean, we have
He didn't have a
regulations.
vision. He said we lacked the vision.
It's already been determined that's obsolete too.
Right, he said we're supposed to be working on it, I'm going, different zone changes. Should we wait or not? I'm just asking her opinion, until this process is completed. That's all.
I think it's a difficult question for Alyssa to answer because she's not involved with it.
It's hard for her to know just coming in.
From my
meeting
perspective,
like this, yeah, it'd be very hard for her to make a.
from my perspective, I think that, you know, Planning and Zoning Commission is working on some regulation updates and changes.
Right.
You know, I think that those can keep moving forward as they're doing their study. I mean, not that, we know how long it takes to get things done. So by the time they get their study done and we have regulations, it's gonna, the timing could come together. The regulations maybe need to tweak one way or the other before they're, but get them on the table and get them kind of
So
drafted.
keep working
Keep
and
working.
Forward, I
And
think,
based,
that'd be good.
and
Continue
based
to work
on your
forward.
report, we can always go back and change if we've kind of
That
gotten
seems
off base.
reasonable.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that way we don't stall. I mean, you know, I was going through the Main Street file the other day, and I'm reading a letter from John Julian to the merchants on Main Street. And it talked about a Main Street Revitalization Committee. And the letter was written to the merchants and the business owners, with some survey questions, and
What
said,
year?
and said, you know, this is what the town's looking at doing, and it was talking about a parking lot, which would have consisted of, you know, where the park is, the vacant lot, and the building where the Chinese restaurant is. You know, and that was something that was done back in the 80s. But the key to it was, that struck me was, that was in 81 or 82. Now, we move forward to 2004 or 5, I was on the Downtown Revitalization Committee. And then, let's jump forward to 2014. From 1981 or 82 to 2015 now. We're talking the same exact things. We're talking the same issues. Nothing has been done in 30 years. And my intention is to move something forward. You know, everybody keeps talking about it, and one important thing we need to qualify us for other funds and grants is a Main Street revitalization plan, a physically, professionally written plan, and I've talked about that. You know, the Main Street Fund by the state of Connecticut. You know, that's a $500,000 grant that the town could get, to do, repairs, maintenance, infrastructure on Main Street. Or we could get that grant and we could use that grant like we do our small cities grant for people to fix up their houses. We could have Community Opportunities Group administer it, and it's a $50,000 matching grant. So if the business owner or the property owner on Main Street, you know, if they've got $50,000 they want to invest into fixing the facade and signage and everything up on their building, they could get a matching grant for whatever qualifies of another $50,000. You know, this is all stuff that's available to us, but until we start moving something forward, we don't qualify it, we don't get it.
So you're hoping this plan will
Well,
enable you to move forward?
I think it's gonna help that move forward,
That's
because that'll be a piece of, when we do that plan, of the Main Street, you know, in the utility project. You know, in the utility project is putting all the power lines under Main Street. You know, we're talking $1.3 million just to put the utility lines under Main Street. And that's basically the same price it was, you know, 20-something years ago when I found papers written to John, when John was looking at doing it. So, you know, this is all stuff that has been talked about, and it's stuff that needs, for the town, needs to move forward. I'm working with DOT on this roundabout rotary, whatever we wanna call it, in front of the town hall. There's two different terms. I'm working with DOT on that. I'm working with DOT on a streetscape design, which is all gonna have to play into, you know, it's gonna start here. Cause this is gonna say, this is where we wanna be, now these pieces fall into it.
Right, right.
I personally think this study is the first step of everything to come, and then there perhaps, to follow up, there would be a second phase, like you had mentioned, as far as, you know, addressing regulations perhaps, or marketing businesses. But even maybe a third phase or part of the second phase could be a micro study of the Main Street area, very similar to this, which building on the information you got, which by then may need to be updated again with survey questions or something like that. But I agree with Rich that we seem to have, and I've been involved in a lot of this for a lot of years too, but it seems that there's a lot of momentum right now in the right direction. Everybody's moving forward and things are starting to get accomplished, and I think we have to keep that going. And I believe this study is an important first step for a foundation for the decisions and so forth.
We all totally agree on that.
That's wonderful. I think it's wonderful that so many commissions are represented here this evening. There are many municipalities where this would not happen, so really commend Stafford for making that happen.
We look forward to working with planning and zoning and the conservation commission to make it happen. So we're all, it's not gonna be one way or another way, it's all of us working together to make it happen, move together in the right direction. That's what our hope is. And I thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Anybody else has any?
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Excellent.
Thank you.
I will revise the work scope and send it to you. If anyone comes up with any other questions, feel free to call them through Richard. I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much.
And I wanna thank everybody for coming to, you get everybody coming to the table together, you get everybody working together, you get all the questions answered. Stop the finger pointing between everybody and everybody collected.
And I would like to recommend a joint meeting, so we can go through
Oh,
this.
absolutely.
I think that
Set a date.
as soon as we can do it, we can all get together to do
Set
that.
a date, maybe June, vacation start, like.
Vacations, what is that?
Yeah, what is that, right now? Thank you.
All right, and then we have, new business. And, I would like to entertain a motion, add approval of the minutes of May 21st and May 19th.
Make a motion to approve the minutes May 19th and May 21st.
Second it.
And also under new business, I passed out to everyone here. I wanted to see if EDC get approval to submit a voucher in for payment to have membership of CEDAS, which is the Connecticut Economic Development Association. And I passed out all the information on that.
Do another copy, Lori?
Is everybody?
You mentioned that was $150 membership, the
Yes,
entire.
for the whole, all the members of the EDC. I can entertain a motion for that.
I would make a motion that we do that.
I'll second it.
Did you want to open the floor?
Yes, I just want to inform the commission members, the rest of the commission members, that something was brought up the last planning and zoning meeting, actually regarding our application that we have going into the planning and zoning board. It was discussed in the meeting, the last meeting, that one of the planning and zoning members is wishing for us to remove our application when we do have that hearing already scheduled. I really do want to inform the members on that. And just wondering if any of you have questions on that. I got the meeting minutes here. It's something that we might have to look at pretty seriously.
Look at in what direction?
In the direction of, we have a member at the planning and zoning that's now expressing bias and possibly removing our duly justified due process. for processing their applications.
Personally, I see no reason to make any change. My position on it.
I don't see a reason, I see a reason to keep it in motion as it is right now.
Take a vote on it.
Take a vote. I'd like to have a hand count, if I could please. All those in favor of keeping the motion going on the regulation change?
Abstain.
I guess I didn't hear anything that lady just said.
You didn't hear anything I said?
No, the lady was speaking.
Oh, okay. Is there, anything else anybody would like to discuss? Would you like to open the meeting?
I just wanna tell you, I talked to Roman McKinney, that property's not available for rent.
It's not.
I did, I talked to him today.
Thank you,
Yeah?
And, I didn't know, there was some interest expressed in the ice cream place. I don't know if that was available, is that open or
Yeah, ice cream shop,
Word on the
that's for
street.
sale.
it's for sale?
It is for sale. $85,000.
Yeah. Good to know. Dave, is there anything you can add to that? Oh, yeah. Do we want to open
I'd like to I know.
I know that.
Larry's property.
I certainly will be.
Two apartments upstairs.
Oh, no, they'll make sure.
Like 76 or 87.
And he really doesn't like it.
I'm sure you guys know what you want.
I'd like to call the meeting to order.
This is all being taped right now, so it's gonna be heard.
I had a comment here, I received this, notice, I'm not really sure where it came from, there are a couple things I was reading through it, I wonder who compiled this thing. One of the comments made in here that, the EDC has put in a request to change the zoning rate to almost triple our current retail cap of 40,000 square feet to 110. That's almost the size of 3 Big Ys. Well, I don't know where that statistic comes from, because we did a survey of the Big Ys area, and the average size is about 9,000 square feet. So whoever dug this information up was digging in the wrong hole. And then there's a comment in the back here concerning members of the EDC and Town Hall attended the CCM municipal training, and I did attend that, I was there. And there's some comments made in there that either I was sleeping or someone else is being very creative, because most of the statements here, I have no knowledge that they ever were said. I think there's been some creative writing here. That's my
It's our
opinion on
social
that.
media, and I believe that's where that came from.
From where?
Facebook.
It's a great place.
So I think you just have to kind of consider.
Very creative out there.
Facebook is just a joke.
I think we
You
should
can't-
put it
You gotta
on
consider the
Facebook.
source.
And if somebody's not gonna sign their name to something, then you know they're just creating
They
trouble.
won't, I'm just curious on why someone's talking about that.
Yeah, if they're not willing to put their name to it, then I would say that's what it's worth.
Do you know anything about the information that's in here from the Facebook? I think this is the Stafford Coalition Group website where we find all of the misinformation.
I think what we should do, if there's no name attached to it, you can consider it trash, and that's pretty much what it is.
Well, I say, I was there, I didn't hear this.
Yeah. Is there, did you want to make a motion to open this public comment, or are we all set?
Yeah, sure. Motion.
I was gonna say, we had the usual garbage, you gotta.
Well, you do,
get
they
usual
have it
garbage.
every
Usual garbage.
You want-
I don't belong to that organization, so I don't know.
You don't?
No.
You don't belong to the Stafford Coalition Group?
No.
Did we Did I hear a motion?
And not only that, but
Yes,
what
we
about the-
had a motion on the
Second.
table
Yeah,
to,
second.
entertain open comment.
Okay, second, second.
I'll look that up. I have nothing to do with that. Let's get
Would
that
anybody
straight
from
back.
the audience,
Yeah.
like to
I'm sure you
pay a
do.
comment?
Yes,
Yes.
I would. I'm very happy that the board is considering CERC. This was a wonderful discussion. My concern is you're going to a public meeting next week to increase the building side to 110,000 square feet before you even know what the town.
I'm not sure if we can even really talk about that, Dave.
Okay,
Is that
we
something
can't
that
talk
we,
about that.
since it's
Okay,
been
well,
brought up
then-
a couple
We
times?
talk about the fact that there's a meeting.
Well,
That there's a
the
meeting.
public hearing has not opened.
Okay.
Okay, then I'll retract what I just said, and
I think
I
it's more
thank
appropriate
you
to speak
for,
at the public hearing.
I thank you for allowing people to come in and listen to this, and it's very refreshing to see all of the boards get together. And I'll refrain to only say that.
Any other comments or anybody?
General comments?
Yep.
So when I was listening to the woman working on the survey, I know that, everybody is talking about how, there's a lot of projects and a lot of visions, in how we can do things. From the Main Street, merchants, I was thinking more of how the EDC can help us work in between those long-term goals, to be able to, continue to improve what we're doing in downtown Stafford. And what I mean by that is, you go to college, your goal is to get a degree. That could take 4 years, 6 years. But in between that, you need a job to work so you can support that college. That's kind of like what I'm saying, what can maybe the EDC help us do in between? So a lot of these things can take time, it is great, but what can we do today to try to enhance what we're already working on? We've done a lot in Main Street, and I listened to her talking about events, which is something that we've done a lot here. What can, maybe you guys can talk about it in another meeting, what are the little things we can do? We're not looking for big things, we're not looking for money, we're looking for little things that can help continue this
Well, I
motion
know,
that we have.
I've gone up to Putnam myself, and I talked to some businesses up in the center of Putnam and what they were doing. And I actually talked to a woman in the Business Association, and we had talked a little bit about that, I think. And they had organized the Business Association, and that is the driving force for all their First Fridays. They're the ones that bring in, whether it's the antique car, whether it's the different themes for the month and everything, but it's kind of like the business association itself, that's the driving force for Putnam and the businesses up there. And they had some great ideas and great things that I saw when I went there for businesses. I had mentioned the envelope, which had a coupon inside it for 15, 25, 50% off. That envelope remained sealed until you came back in the next time. And that's when that envelope was opened and you found out, which would somewhat guarantee kind of like a return visit, but it was a business association that they established, and each business put in $100 a year, and that's what helped funded whatever kind of performances or things they wanted to do on the First Fridays, whatever band they wanted to get, or if they wanted to promote, a certain theme, or that they used that, or they had contests, they have the carving of the pumpkins, they have a lot of those things, and it's the businesses themselves that get together in a group that do that. I know that the woman that there's a woman that writes the grants and is helping Putnam with promoting revitalization in that sense, but utilizing the energy from the falls up there and making apartments, and she's a grant writer and that's where she pursues. I don't believe that she has any part in what happens for the First Fridays. I mean, I think that your momentum that Main Street has done now in Stafford has been fabulous. I mean, you have a crowd that comes down, it's, you have performers down on Main Street. I think you've done a great job on, really on your own, basically. The commission, we've talked about, different things with the railroad line, if that should come into play, a map outlining the different places for the businesses. There's on the town website, there's, you can go on there and you can get to a web page that will lead you to a business, that there's all the businesses, there's little maps and there's businesses of them, and then you can click onto the business location and you could key into a website for your own, for your business. So somebody came to Stafford, they looked on the EDC site, you know, on the front page there, they could click onto a business, they could link you to that site, your site, if you tied into that. I mean, so they have a few things that are going on there.
I just wanna thank everybody again for coming, I gotta run. Somebody called in that there's oil on the Hyde Park duck pond up there, so I gotta meet the fire departments up there. So I just wanna thank everybody for coming in, I'm up there.
I appreciate what you're saying, but I think a lot of the stuff is something that what you're saying, I think all my coworkers in Main Street feel that that's more of our job, and that's what we've done. I'm thinking more, my concern as a business person here in town is that I think we're done a lot. All the coworkers, and we got to a point where we're having a lot of success in Arts on Main, good weekends, we're doing great. But my concern is hitting a plateau. It's getting to a point where we're just gonna hit there, and then what next? We can promote, we can do a lot of activities, it does cost a lot of money, and it is our investment. I'm not saying that we cannot do that, but we're getting to a point where we might hit a plateau, and the plateau could mean not enough traffic coming into town. I feel, and I'm not gonna speak, you know, on behalf of my coworkers, but I feel that I have a business model that works. It's just I need more foot traffic. And how can that, and that's what I'm kind of looking guidance and how DDC can help us, because from my perspective, I'm looking more as how can we make Stafford a safer, walkable, vibrant, using the woman's words, vibrant, to be able to attract more people to come to downtown. Those are the things I'm talking about, the look of Main Street, signage. You know, the other day I was thinking about, you know, how you were talking about the racetracks. We have to get a lot of people. You know, how can we capitalize on that? Can we maybe have, you know, some of the police officers help those people get through, get people excited about how, hey, coming to Stafford is a nice experience, you know, there's a lot of people we can get through. Little things like that makes downtown be more vibrant, and it helps us be able to promote it more. That's more what I'm thinking of. The second part to that is, I cannot tell you how many people come to my shop and say, I want to open a business, I just don't know where to go. How can we maybe encourage owners in town that have spaces? You know, we cannot make owners rent, I know that. But maybe we can create incentives. Maybe, you know, they would say, okay, maybe I will work into that. It's not that everybody's gonna go with that. I do respect the fact that some people might not wanna rent. In order for us to keep growing, we need more retail in Main Street. And that's more like what I'm looking for as your guidance and help in that perspective. Thank you.
We have compiled a list of the properties that are available.
Oh, great.
We were looking, there was a bakery that
Awesome.
was looking to come into town.
Yeah, I
There
actually
was,
spoke to
another,
Tony, but I want to make
the
it
ice cream place.
That's
There was
awesome.
a couple of things that we have, it's
Yeah, we got a list here.
doing it.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome.
I think it could help if the Business Association wrote a letter to the EDC and said, these are the things
We can do
we
that.
think that you could help us do,
Right.
or, we're not experts. We're citizens like you. You own the business, we don't know what you want or what you need. You know you want more money, but beyond that. So it may be of some help, and some of what you said is planning and zoning issues. So it may be of some help for you to put together a list of all that and, you know, get that to
We
us.
can
and
definitely do
help-
that. Thank
and
you.
help
See
us
what
do that.
issues we can address ourselves
Thank
and what
you.
we can help.
You know, he had also mentioned signage, and you know, we always go back to the notion that we've got a lot of history here. I don't know if this is something you all discussed, but is there an opportunity maybe to install some historical markers or some signs throughout various places on Main Street that would just be of interest for people who are walking through Main Street
About
that
the
might generate?
significance of different, like a potential idea is something much smaller scale of, say, the Freedom Trail in Boston.
Right.
Where you could have markings on the sidewalk that, over to the fountain, you know, to the Rotary, to, you know, significant places where, you know, so-and-so stayed in 1822 or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, if someone, maybe in speaking with the Historical Society, you could information that would be of interest to bookmark or something. I think we could work together on something like that. And in regards to your previous comment about, perhaps drawing from people at the racetrack, has the Business Association put together a flyer of the businesses that perhaps you guys could stand out at the racetrack handing out flyers of list?
We have put together flyers of about 40 businesses in the downtown area that we've put in all of the campgrounds and all of our businesses.
But I mean,
And a lot
have
of
you handed
places.
them out like at the races?
Well, most of us are by ourselves with families.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I just.
We haven't gone to the racetrack, we
Dave,
have
to
gone
add
to
to your
a
comment, have you ever been in Bristol, Tennessee when NASCAR's running? You can't find a building that doesn't have a flyer.
And you know what, and that's another, we should be,
They live on that.
Yeah.
We sh-
That would be very
we
inexpensive.
should have welcome race bands, we should have,
You should.
I
That's
think,
something you can do for
un-
yourself very inexpensive.
I think another thing is, my thing that the EDC would be nice if EDC could work with us on like helping us plan events. My thing has always been over the past few years to bring as many town organizations as possible into what we're doing. And it would be nice if we had a connection with EDC to other groups and other businesses.
You're disturbing the meeting.
Put it in your minutes, I expect to see it.
You're disturbing the meeting.
Well, if we had like a race week or something,
It's not nice.
what if we reached out to the owner of the Speedway? I think we talked about that before.
Just drop it.
I'd like to call this meeting back to order. I want both parties here to stop. Thank you.
In the past, the racetrack has been accommodating the various organizations, the Lions, the Knights of Columbus, all the athletic boosters, and so on and so forth. I mean, to be there to hand out flyers, something like that, or even, I remember the Billboard truck, Blues Brothers car, who knows? It's.
Blues Brothers.
They're really accommodating. I myself have gone down there and left flyers down there after asking, so they will allow you to do so.
Will that be another part of beautifying Main Street, and if we could push that along somehow? I know that the town isn't made of money, but it would be nice to get some connections going on to help clean up the lot and other various.
Such an eyesore on Main Street.
And I know that.
I know that they're working on it.
And it would be
There's different
nice if
discussions
that's
that are
our
going on.
And the traffic issue.
Well, we can't change the dynamics of
I
Main Street.
know, we can't wiggle our nose and make everything.
It would have been nice if it was a nice walk on Main Street, but it's not.
And then that's the main.
You know, in
right.
my dream world, there'd be bushes and pretty little lamp posts and,
I think it's
Something like
important
that.
for the businesses to utilize, like the Blues Festival coming in. I mean,
that's
they could have this in the sandwich shop, Blues Burgers, or, I mean, you could really
And
capitalize on
we do
those
something,
things,
all
yeah.
of the businesses do something for the Blues Fest, cause it's exciting.
But we did a traffic, study a while ago, remember, Gene, because of, we're just the main route, 32 and 190, and we just have one way in and one way out, and there's not much you can do about to divert the traffic. We
Well, I
don't
don't
wanna
think it's-
divert it from there.
I don't think it's diverting enough to slow it down.
I'm just gonna make a motion
I want
to
to go slow and
close
see
public
it.
comment.
We want them to go slow so somebody doesn't die.
Oh, Mark, sorry, Mark.
That's quite all right, I just thought I got shut off. But I just want to direct this to the Main Street businesses that are looking to perhaps capitalize on the Speedway attendance. Since unless I'm otherwise sick, I'm there every Friday. I know Mark Harut quite well. He's a very affable and professional person. He's very easy to talk to. I would recommend that you contact him. I'm quite sure he would sit down with you. And he probably could offer you maybe several alternatives to help you promote. He may not have any, but I do know that he has done anything and everything that he could, even at his own expense, to help organizations within the town of Stafford. So I think that would be your best bet, is I would advocate that you contact Mark.
Thank you.
And let's let last person as Steve.
As far as the downtown association goes, what you guys have done has been tremendous. I've lived here for
28 years, and I've spent more time downtown with my wife in the last 8 months than I did the other 27 years, because you have so much going on. And to talk about you, like the people coming in, how to get more people, I think you focus on the events where people are coming from out of town. I can tell you many years, we brought our in-laws, friends, or whatever to the fireworks here. And they all say, you guys have the best fireworks show around. And there's a ton of people going to the fireworks in Stafford that aren't from town. That'd be a great place for you guys to have some type of flyer to hand out to everybody who's there. A lot of people from out of town. And I have to imagine, I haven't been to the Blues Fest, but there must be thousands of people from out of town. You know, and a lot of those people, from what I saw,
We're getting there.
a lot of those people walk in with coolers, right? And they go sit down and listen to blues. Main Street's right there, but they might not see it. You gotta find a way to get those people to know, hey, look, we got a great whole bunch of shops over here.
What
You know,
we do
find a way to get them to
advertise
come over.
with, we all sponsor the Blues Fest. We all, put information in their flyer because we're, as Main Street businesses, we're very, very much into come and play with us kind of a mentality, and we wanna support whoever is coming into the area, or if they've got an event going on someplace else in town, we really try hard to promote other people's events. If you walk by any of our businesses, our windows are covered of everybody else's posters, and we do sponsor the Blues Fest, and we do sponsor, other events that other people are doing in the downtown area. We are trying to do that. I think as a whole, as other people get involved in doing things in the downtown area that aren't just businesses, and we're promoting them, they'll be promoting us. I
You
mean,
still have a lot more people in town. I brought friends of mine from town that live here as long as I have, down to the Arts on Main, and they've gone to shops and go, we didn't realize these existed.
Yeah.
Because they never come and stop downtown and walk around.
And you're correct, because I hear that a lot when people walk into my store.
Yeah.
I didn't even realize how long you been here, you know?
And I know you wanna end, so I'm gonna, one statement, so, yes, promoting is important, and that's something we've been doing a lot. We have had the Hartford Courant come, which they haven't come to Stafford for a long time, come in and talk about Stafford. We have newspapers from London, Meriden, doing articles on downtown. So we've done a lot of that. I think it's going back to the word vibrant. Someone can come from New York and love downtown, but they need to fall in love with downtown completely, and we need to make it vibrant. We need to make it so people go, wow, I will drive 30 minutes back here again to spend some time in Stafford. And that's what I think is what we're looking for, helping how we can make that. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We're closing the public comment, there's some motions. You wanna entertain a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion.
I'll second.
Alrighty.
Hey, Gene,
Thank you. Good night.
don't forget, vote no tomorrow.
Sal?